Hey, welcome to the Carpool with Ben, folks. As we continue these virtual sessions, as we're going through these times right now, there are kids in hospitals all across the United States who are getting some amazing treatments from various doctors and nurses and specialists out there. And all the medicine, all the science is great, but there is nothing that helps more than good, healthy laughter and wholeheartedness. So I bring to you one of the founders of Healthy Humor and one of the performers for Healthy Humor. We have Dina, Paul, who's one of the founders of Healthy Humor, and Geneviève Flati, who is one of the most amazing TikTokers and performers. I mean, just everywhere. And it's so great to have you both in. Dina, you are over in New York. Geneviève, you're in California, LA. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to join me. Your work spans across the country in a couple dozen hospitals. Dina, can you just kind of give me an idea of just the overview of what is Healthy Humor? What's the organization? I mean, I'm sure many people have seen movies and different stories about the work you do, but give me a little bit more than just that surface level.
Sure. So Healthy Humor is first of all, we're a nonprofit organization, and I certainly want to say thank you for the opportunity to do this because a lot of people don't know about this work and they should. So thank you for the platform to kind of spread the good news about the good work that the performers like Geneviève and the other performers, 60 or 65 or so around the country do. We're what we call a healthcare clowning organization. So we send professional performers into pediatric hospitals, mostly into pediatric hospitals. We have a couple other venues, but the bulk of our work is what Geneviève does at Loma Linda Children's in Southern California, and what our other performers do at 14 other hospitals around the country. And basically, we take professional performers who have been trained in a variety of disciplines. So, you know, whether they're clowns or magicians or dancers or improv artists, you know, whatever it is. And we train them specifically to operate in the hospital environment, which is a very sensitive environment that's filled with trauma and a lot of tension and a lot of stress. There are tons of amazing performers out there who do amazing work. But you put them in front of a child who has a mask on or who's burned or who is, you know, about to have a leg amputated, and right? So we have to audition and make sure that it's the right kind of performer who can operate in that kind of space, because it's a very specialized kind of space. So we operate in teams of 2. And we have a relationship with the hospital that sometimes it's just 1 day a week, depending on the hospital. Our largest program is at Nicholas Children's in Miami, where we go in 8 shifts a week. So there's like 1 or 2 days where we actually go in the morning and then in the afternoon. And the idea is not that they go in and kind of do a show or do a shtick. It's not the way the program works. It's very individualized. So they kind of make their way through the hospital. They have certain rounds. So let's say it's 2 days a week. On Tuesdays, they might go to, 3 patient floors, the ED, and an outpatient clinic. On Friday, that's their second day, they might go to 3 other patient floors, 2 other outpatient clinics, and radiology, or something like that. So they have set rounds, like regular doctors. And they kind of, they go in and they do whatever the moment needs, whatever the moment calls for. So if you go into a room of a kid who's a teenager and they're ticked because, their soccer season is lost because they've broken a leg, that's a very different type of interaction than with a child than with a 2 or 3-year-old who's crying because they don't want to, get their blood taken. And so it's very individualized, it's very tailored, and we work with professional performers, and we work with the physicians and other medical staff, and they just, kind of create a deep partnership with whoever is there, and they do what they do, and however long the interaction needs to last to make that connection and to make that transformation for that particular family, and then they leave and then they move on to the next room or to a clinic or to the ER or whatever it is. And I like to say, whenever the interaction finishes, they leave a little bit of fairy dust in their wake. And it's a very different energy and space than before they entered it. I hope that helps.
That is so incredible. A lot of people, I kind of touched on the fact that, there's been a lot of stories, whether it be in the news, they've seen movies, perhaps they've seen different, short stories on the internet or somewhere else about this kind of work. And to the casual common observer, they may think, oh, okay, somebody just shows up as a clown suit, like, yeah, go down to room 327 and see this kid over there, or this and that. There's a lot that goes into it, and I very much appreciate you breaking that down for me from that side. But also, Geneviève, you have such an extensive background in your craft, whether it be performance, puppetry, theater, improv. There's just so many elements to it, and it's not like, it always drives me crazy. It always drives me crazy when somebody says this person's acting like a clown, because chances are they are using that clown term in a bad way. That's not the way it is.
No.
The fact that you're not acting like the clowns I know, all right? The professionals, the real ones. Geneviève, can you just give a little bit of an overview of what your specialty is? And also, it's not just, oh, throw this on and go. You work on this every day.
Yes. So like Dina said, all of our performers are professional performers that have been trained in healthcare clowning. The audition process for this particular job is similar to audition processes for like regular performance jobs, where you have a performance side audition, and then your callback is you're paired actually with an experienced healthcare clown, and you go and you do some rounds because they want to see how you're able to adjust in the moment, and if you can do this kind of work, because it is very different. There is a performance side, but there's also a very personal side, and so you kind of have to have both. For me personally, I've came into performance world as like a musical theater actor. And then I, at 20, was cast in the Ringling Brothers Circus and was in their show as a clown and a writer for them for a few years. And my favorite part, and I always say this when I talk about my time at Ringling, my favorite part was always when we did the hospital visits. We would do them almost every city that we could, and there's a feeling about when you go into an arena and there's a crowd of 5,000, 10,000 people, but there's such a different thing about when you go into a room with a child that maybe hasn't laughed in weeks, and you're right there with them, and there's just this, as a performer, it's such a weird thing, but that's the one that sticks with you. Really, really, it sticks with you. Oh my gosh, I forgot what your question was. I got it. We're going back. I got it. We're going back. It was so I actually have trained for my big thing. I'm a specialty in improv, and I've trained and graduated from Upright Citizens Brigade, which is Amy Poehler's school, and IO West, which is a branch of IO, where like Chris Farley and Tina Fey and all of those people trained at Second City, which is where Tina Fey and Steve Carell and all of those people trained. Groundlings, you name it, I've done it. I'm a performer on the Jim Henson Puppet Up, which is improv puppeteering, and I perform with like Brian Henson and a few other comedy and puppeteering legends. And so I'm a puppeteer. I've worked for Disney as well as Jim Henson Company and TV shows and commercials and all that jazz. And the combination of tools in your toolbox is what you bring. You have all of these things that you can pull from, because you'll, like Dina said, you'll go to one room and it's maybe a nonverbal child that is 3 or 4 years old. And so that's when you bring more visual things, like maybe a little bit of finding something in the room and making it a puppet, or maybe something musical, because I studied musical theater. So maybe you'll make up a song or sing a song in the moment. And you're having a really fun time, pull that toolbox. And then the very next room is a teenager that doesn't want you there, that you kind of have to win over. And that's when you pull from like more of like an improv side, and you can talk about this and talk about this and tell me like this, and it helps you in those moments. So it's all of our performers have such deep toolboxes that they can pull from. They're really all very talented, and you just have to be to succeed at this.
Dina, what was it like getting G to be not so shy? How did that process go?
Oh, well, I have to confess that I am actually not the one who auditioned G, but I did hear about her before I even knew of her.
Yeah.
Loma Linda is our 15th program, and it's been operating since last year. We've had programs that have had this program for more than 2 decades. So we have a large span in terms of what we call rookie performers, like G, at least rookie healthcare clowns. And then we have, healthcare clowns who have been doing this for 3 decades. And so my colleague, Deborah Kaufman, who is our co-founder and director of training and education, she's the one who actually does the auditions. And as G said, they're the real deal. They're like, there's a studio audition, there are callbacks, you get notes, and I think that it was very obvious from everything that I was told, because I'm not the artist, right? That's why I don't do auditions. I'm what my colleagues who are both themselves performers and used to do this themselves before they came on the administrative side, they call me the suit of the operation. So we're 3 co-founders and I'm the one who makes sure that trains run on time, so to speak. But
well, thank God for people like you. Hey, we need you.
I am reminded all the time though that I do work with clowns. And I actually, when I started this, my husband was like, "Can I tell people now that you work with a bunch of clowns?" And I was like, "Yes, you can actually tell people now that I work with a bunch of clowns," and it's really true and totally accurate. But it was very obvious to Deborah and the other folks who were auditioning the new team that G was a natural fit, largely because she had this extensive background as an artist. And also because clearly her disposition, her enthusiasm,
Sure.
the brightness of her spirit was exactly what you want in terms of attracting a child and bringing them out of their shell if they're in pain or if they're traumatized. You want people to be able to connect quickly because a child needs to know that, someone is paying attention to them and only them. And I think that G being able to kind of direct all of that energy and focus, making a child feel like they're the only person in the room, is a special gift. So we lucked out in that her talent isn't only with in terms of the artistry in the hospital, but also because of what she does for us as our social media manager. So you referenced her TikTok, extensive TikTok experience. She's taken over our channel. Is trying to grow all of our platforms and get people to like us and follow us, and she's really pushing us in terms of making sure that not just her but all of our performers across the country are producing content, particularly now because we're not in the hospitals obviously and we're waiting to go back in. So she's been great for our organization in a variety of ways.
So we talk, kind of touch on the fact that you're the suit of the operation. And there's a few different things here. Ringling was amazing when it was there, but it was in, 40 some odd cities a year and, or every other year, depending on how the schedule worked. What Healthy Humor is doing, it's more of that. It's not just that one-shot burst. This is a regular form of therapy and a regular treatment. How is it working with the doctors or perhaps the admin staff or even board of directors at various hospitals, trying to get them to understand that and put it where you're matching it with the services rendered? It's just as important as a respiratory therapist or an oncologist. Say, look, we need to be on that kind of level and that schedule. How has that? How do those conversations work out? Very good, obviously, by all the hospitals you're at, but I mean, just to start off with.
Yeah, well, I think just to give a little bit of history, which I didn't give before, Healthy Humor started as a standalone organization in 2016, but it grew out of, Z referenced Ringling Brothers. Our work grew out of the Big Apple Circus.
Okay.
Healthcare clowning actually started as part of Big Apple Circus back in the late 70s. And so we took that when the circus was breaking apart, we saved that part of the circus, the healthcare clowning work, and we started with some of the organizations, some of the hospitals that had already had it and knew of its value and legitimacy and had had it for, decades. And then we've grown it. So, there are some hospitals now that we started that came to us as Healthy Humor, Loma Linda being one of them, as well as some of the others. And so we were able to benefit from the fact that we already had a track record with a lot of premier institutions. We had been in Children's National for a long time. We had been in John Hopkins Children's Center. We had had a long-standing program, more than 20 years, at Memorial Sloan Kettering Cancer Center. So we had a lot of legitimacy. One of our greatest partners in this work at all hospitals is the child life staff. And for people who are fortunate enough to not know what a child life staff person is because they haven't had a child who's needed a child life staff support at a hospital, you're very, very lucky. But for those people whose children have faced illness, know what a child life staff person does and the kind of support they provide 24/7 to children. And so the child life staff, it's just like any other profession. They talk to each other. They travel from hospital to hospital. When people move, and because we've developed such a deep partnership with child life staff, when they go to a new hospital or when we're trying to get into a new hospital, we can get them to connect with their counterparts, and they will sing our praises and kind of serve as our advocates and our champions to a degree that people understand the value without us having to say it. We can open the door, but then we'll bring in child life staff and other physicians and other folks who they already have established that legitimacy. And so if they're vouching for us, I think it really has, served to play an extensive role in our growth and in our expansion. And in terms of the work itself, the way that we work hand in glove with the professionals in the hospital, one of my favorite stories actually is out of Johns Hopkins Children's Center. And it was, when two performers, two clowns, came to a room of a child that they had formed a relationship with, right? We have what we call our frequent flyers, kids that are either come in often for like outpatient treatments, or they're in the hospital for a long time for a chronic illness, that kind of thing, right? So you get to know them because, again, they go to the hospital on a regular shift and they know this person's coming this day. The clowns are going to be here Monday, Wednesday, and Thursday. So, they have those kinds of relationships. And these particular clowns, when we're coming into a room of a child who had had surgery the day before, and physical therapy, for anybody who's had surgery, lots of times, like in order to be discharged, physical therapy needs you to, they need to make sure that you eat, to know that your digestive system is working, and they need to make sure that you walk, to make sure that your joints are working, that you started the recovery process. If those things don't happen, you don't get discharged. And this particular child had it. She was a teenager, and she was pissed and annoyed and didn't want to walk and didn't want to cooperate with anybody. And so they approached the room, and the child's mother was outside of the room, and you could just tell she had it, right? Not had it in the sense of she was angry. She was just beaten down by the entire situation and by watching her child go through this trauma. And the clowns immediately picked up on it. They were like, Mom was tired and frustrated. And so that immediately went into the thinking of, okay, how we're going to handle this situation. And the child, they walk in and the kid's like, where you guys been? You're late, And so that, that factored into, how they responded to her. And they're like, oh, well, we were on our way, but, the elevators, like every elevator that came to pick us up, it was full. And so we had to figure out, so it turns into a story. It turns into a way of engaging the child. And before the child knew it, she was like, well, I'd like to see, how you solve that problem. And they're like, well, we can't do that in here. We have to go outside into the hallway in order to be able to demonstrate to you, what we were talking about. So the child grabbed her IV pole and followed them outside. So she's walking, wow, which is exactly what physical therapy needed her to do without having to tell her, pick up your IV pole and walk.
Right.
And so, they paraded around the unit. She did her walking without even realizing it, and she was discharged the next day. So our purpose is yes to get the smile, yes to, bring the levity and the humor and just, lift the spirits. But our goal is to try and be a support as much as we can to the staff and to work hand in glove with them. It's a very deep partnership. They trust us. They call us when, a lot of our clowns will carry beepers like regular doctors.
Sure.
And they're like, oh, we have an autistic child in the ED who might benefit from interaction. And so, they can be on call in that way. And that's the way that we, have demonstrated our value over and over again. I feel like I'm talking a lot. I'm going to let G talk about her experience because I don't do this. I just read about it and I can see it sometimes when I shadow them. But, G has had, I know, incredible experiences of actually bringing those transformations herself on the floor. So it would be great to hear one of her stories.
Well, we absolutely need, that backbone, that suit to keep everything together. So that's why I let it go, because there's people need to, I think, understand. I think a lot of people, I used to do with the company I used to work with, I still do a lot of work with, we used to furnish, they still do the Ronald McDonald Houses of Providence. And when I would talk to people of the Ronald McDonald House, I'd say it's the most beautiful house you've ever seen. It's warm, it's loving, you get a hot meal there. It's absolutely gorgeous. And I hope you never have to stay there, because if a family's staying there, they are going through, they're just going through the worst of the worst times. And it's just, it's not the best situation. Gee, your element of working with the child, however old they are, I'm sure that extends, and that treatment also translates to, I know what Dina said as far as the staff, but the parent or the guardian or whoever is there, you almost have to have that, okay, looking, kind of reading both and being able to multitask.
I'll say one, I'm going to backtrack a little bit to add on to something that Dina was talking about, of like why the staff and why people trust us, or why are we even there? There have been scientific studies that have proven that when you laugh or you smile, your body releases adrenaline, dopamine, endorphins, which not only improves your mood, which is very important, your mental health is very important, especially when you're in a hospital. Your mental health is very important, but it also does physiologically help you heal faster. You need that adrenaline, that dopamine, those endorphins. It will help your body heal faster. So there are scientific benefits to actually the physical laughing. Sure. And what we do, there's this psychological phenomenon that is happening. The reason why because people go, well, why do you have to be in clown makeup at all? And we go, there's this like phenomenon of the second we have a little red dot right here, people can immediately recognize that we are different from the other grownups that come into their life, that are walking around. Just that little bit that gives us that immediate permission to be different. The children will notice us, or the adults will notice us, and they go, that's somebody different. So then we can come in and we can do either the absurd, and go in and we can trip and fall and smash into doors, or we can sing songs, or we can do whatever, but we also bring them back to a feeling of normality, so that absurd mask actually will help them come back to being normal. Because a lot of the times, especially with the nurses, the doctors, the staff, the parents, we'll just chat with them. Right. I've gone into several rooms where maybe it's a sleeping baby and it's a parent or parents or grandparents, and they're just sitting in there on their phone, and we'll come in and we knock. There's a fundamental rule of healthy humor of you always ask permission. You always ask permission to enter the room for the child, because they might say no. And that's so empowering for a child where every other aspect of their life is someone telling them what to do. They can't say no to the medicine. They can't say no. They have to do what the adults tell them to. So now we come in and we say, can we come in? And they might go, no. And we can turn that no into a yes if we see that there might be an opportunity of like, oh no, I'm going to stand out here. Can I stand here? And maybe they'll say no. And they'll go, can I stand here? And they'll say no. And suddenly that no is now a yes. They're playing with us. And then we negotiate our way into the room. But sometimes they'll just go, nope. Yeah. And we go, cool. They will say, have a good day. And that no is very empowering. But a lot of the times for the adults, if we're in there, we'll just chat about like you see them, their eyes kind of come back to focus of, did you see the football game last week? And a dad will just be like, I'm going to talk about this forever and blah, 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 blah,
Sure.
because no doctor's going in there or nurse because they have business to attend to naturally. So we're there and we're like, oh my gosh, did you see the new episode of Game of Thrones? And they're like, oh my gosh, yes, blah, 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 blah. And so we're there for everybody. And sometimes also with nurses, they just want to talk to us about normal things.
Sure.
And then sometimes they want to talk to us about things that go on in the hospital because they know that we're not about to just like go up and be like, I know, can you believe what Jimmy said? Like, or we'll just agree with them. So we're there to bring absurdity, but we're also there to bring normality in their world of chaos. So it's this, it sounds like this weird, like double thing, but because we can be absurd and in a chaotic environment, we bring them back to reality.
Yeah, I actually want to say one thing about that,
Please.
because the first time I saw the work was about 6 weeks after I'd started at the circus, because I had actually started at the Big Apple Circus with my colleagues who eventually we ended up leaving and starting Healthy Humor, but I started with them in 2014 at the. And when I started, I'd read about the work, I'd seen it, and thought I understood. And then I actually shadowed a group of our performers at one of the hospitals in New York City, at what was then called Bronx Lebanon Hospital. And I remember I had a distinct memory of waking up that day and going, oh, I'm going to go see the clowns make kids laugh today. It's going to be so cute. And as a layperson, that was my perception of what I was going to see, which is completely normal. And there was some of that. There was certainly laughter. It was certainly cute and giggles and, kids having a good time and all of that. What I was not prepared for was the power of what I saw in terms of the adults in the space and with the kids too, but like watching a parent watch their child interact with the clowns in a way that brings the parent to tears. Because you have to remember, these kids, a lot of them are in a lot of pain. So we've had parents say to us, oh my God, I haven't seen her smile in a week.
Yeah.
I haven't seen my child. I've seen my sick child, but I haven't seen my child in a very long time. And that is a gift to a parent who's watching their child suffer, right? It's magic. And so, we like to say that we treat the healthy part of the child, and it's really true, because I think as most lay people, when I go to visit a hospital or when you have friends who are sick, you see a friend who's sick, right? You see, somebody's like sneezing or coughing or they're laying or they're weak or whatever, have a fever. That's what you see. The clowns are so adept at remembering that underneath the sick child, there's a child who wants to play, and they can elicit that child, the real child, out of that. And so for me, I think it's a reminder of just bringing back to the normalcy, to like, oh, it's just a kid who wants to play. Even if they're hooked up to IVs, and even if, they have an oxygen mask on, and even if all of this madness is happening around them, bottom line, when it comes down to it, they're a kid who wants to play. And the clowns will do that for them and for everyone around them. It's magic.
I think there's two things. There is therapy in the mundane. And, if you've been through something traumatic or sometimes just mowing the lawn or doing that normalcy stuff just to kind of make you feel normal and grounded, like you said, talking to perhaps the parents about, what's been on TV or different things that are out there, or the nurses, and the staff there, because you're really treating everybody. It's that holistic approach. And then, the other thing that really sticks out to me, and you mentioned it, and I never thought of this before, is you're dealing with an adult who, at a different time in their life, a clown or their first experience with clowns and humor, life was different. The child may not have been, present. The technology may not have been there. It might bring them back to a relative who's no longer with them. So there's therapy there, but you're bridging that gap between those generations of, okay, as a child, I laughed at this. And now this child who may have never had the experience just because of their circumstances to go experience a clown outside of a hospital, they're seeing that normalcy, and it's inherent in them. It's not something they've learned, or they know, like, oh, okay, I'm supposed to laugh at this. So I think what you brought up there, G, was that person's different, And there's a reason for that. And I think that's incredible. We are getting close to time here. I will say this, in Rhode Island, we have this thing called Good Night Lights. Every night at 8:30, it's called the Magic Minute. And an artist in resident at the Hasbro Children's Hospital told a child one night, look, as I'm coming home, I'll stop on the bike path and I'm going to flash my flashlight at you at 8:30 at your window, and you can flash it back. This has gotten national attention. There's stories everywhere, and you can see it now to the point where there are police departments, there are fire departments that do it every night. Last year, there was one night when during a storm, we had a massive power outage. And there's stories about the firefighters at different Providence fire stations. They had just gotten back from doing calls and stuff, and they were just about to eat. And somebody called up and said, there's no power for these buildings, because now all the tall buildings, the skyscrapers and stuff, they all get involved. They've installed special lights and timers and stuff to do it. And so these fire departments said, drop the meals, let's go. We got to go line the river so we can do this. And it's an incredible story, and I'll be sure to link it because it really means something. But there's this sense of loss or sadness when a child gets discharged. And they're like, oh, so does that mean yesterday was my last Good Night Lights? Can I stay for tonight just because I want to do it one last time? G, is there do you experience that where it's like, it's the joy of, yes, you're getting out, you're getting discharged, but I'm going to miss this element and this interaction from both the child and the parent, perhaps?
Yes. So the difference between like the Ringling one, where you kind of like, you're in that city for once and you go and you do this thing, versus what we do, which is we develop a relationship with the kids there, and the kids that are there frequently are called frequent flyers. Maybe they're there for long-term treatment for whatever. I personally actually have already gone through this where I've gotten attached to a few kids, and there was one boy.
Broke your heart.
He was amazing. I love talking to him. He was a teenager, and he was about to turn 18. And I was talking to him. I was like, okay, we're going to be here for your birthday. We're going to definitely be here. And I was like, this is what we're going to do. And this, we're going to, and we're planning his party. I was so excited. I bought him a bunch of things. Like, I was ready to come in. I had balloons in my car, I had a present in my car. We were joking about all the things that he was going to be able to do when he turned 18. And then he was discharged before he turned 18.
Yeah.
And I, oh my God, I'm already like, and I'll never, and I'm so glad that he was discharged, but I will never see him again.
Yeah.
And he's not the only one. He's just one that comes to mind. And
Sure.
we're so glad that these people get better, because that's what we want. We joke about it. I'm so glad to see you. I hope I never see you again. Sure. And that's the hardest part, is you get to know the person. It is not a patient. It is not a statistic. It's a person, and we love them. We really do. Our hearts are so open to these people, and it's this weird thing that you hope you come to their room next week and they're not there, and you're happy and devastated at the same time.
Sure.
And that's why this work is very, very difficult and so worth it, because I knew that our time together was amazing and definitely helped him get through. He would tell us that he was excited to see us. We had a running game of paper airplanes. Is actually up on our site, of him throwing airplanes and trying to hit me with paper airplanes, and I would run around like those ducks in those games, and it would help him get up and move. And I would make fun of him and tell him that he had stupid aim, that he was terrible, because he was like every other teenage boy that just wants to be teased by his friends.
Sure.
And that was the last interaction I had with him. And
Wow.
And it's really hard.
Folks, there are so many of these powerful stories in the hospitals that Healthy Humor is involved in, and they could honestly use your support, not only just as a nonprofit organization, but if you are in the situation where you find yourself in contact with execs or doctors or people at hospitals, share this episode with them so that they can see exactly the impact, the incredible positive impact of regular positive and encouraging care that the many performers like Geneviève bring. And Dina, we couldn't do it without you. You holding it together. You holding it, the
She
family
does.
together.
She does.
Folks,
I'm happy to be on the back end and let them shine. I certainly couldn't do what they do. They are definitely heroes for sure.
absolutely, they are. And as we move forward past this current time we're in, and as the hospitals start to open back up and get this therapy going again in person, until then, Geneviève, wish you all the best, and keep pushing out that content. Come on, we need it.
Yeah,
Dina?
we have some virtual visits going on with our hospital partners too, so that's very exciting. And I don't know if you're going to post our website. I won't say it if you will.
The internet is this incredible thing where you can connect
I know,
to
people
anybody
can just
literally
Google it.
around the world.
But
Dina and Geneviève,
it's grateful. Thank you so much for your time. It means so much.
Yes.
thank you so much, folks. Thanks for tuning in. Go find these folks, learn about them. Just absolutely soak it in, because it's something that, especially right now, in this time we're in, or if you're watching this, a year or two from now, and things are back to normal, whatever the case is, this service is so needed and could totally use your support. So we would greatly appreciate it. Thank you so much. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank
Geneviève,
you.
on the West Coast,
One.
you have so many more hours left in the day than we do.
That's
Geneviève,
right.
So I mean, you'll work out
Thanks
again.
so much, Ben. I really appreciate your time. Thank you.